Everybody loves free agency and trades to upgrade the roster, fans alike, as well as media personnel. It's fun, especially when the NFL season's over. That's what we straight to go into, is who the Lions are going to sign, who they're going to bring in to upgrade their roster to help it out. And we had a great free agency to start off free agency. You got Cameron Sutton, C.J. Gardner-Johnson, Emmanuel Mosley, Marvin Jones Jr. a little bit into it, and we had a really good free agency, and it's still going on. Let's be honest here. There's still players in the market the Lions could look to bring in, and we've seen that and talked about it. An article came out today that some people in the know or in the NFL or people that study it think the Detroit Lions going to make another free agent splash, another big move to upgrade the roster before training camp. So we're going to go over this bad boy, give you the key points that they're talking about here. Do I think it's legit and all of that? But before we get into today's video, subscribe to the channel, subscribe to it, and let's get to 8,000 subscribers. It does help out. We build this thing. Let's get this thing going. Here we go. We're getting this article right here. It says Detroit Lions predicted to make a next big splash in free agency. This article is just going over the idea that they believe the Lions are not done making a big move here towards, adding and acquiring more talent for this team before training camp. And there's players that talked about Yannick Ngakoue, Jadeveon Clowney, Matthew Ioannidis, Chris Wormley, Maxx Crosby trade. So it's not just free agency, but it's also trades here. And we've seen it, right? Cooper Kupp, Aaron Donald, Michael Pittman, the names galore that we have been seeing this offseason. It's been crazy. This offseason has been loaded with players that the media would like the Detroit Lions to acquire. And this is just the latest one here talking about it. Could the Lions sign a Yannick Ngakoue? They could, right? He's a free agent. He still produces. He's not all that old. He could be a part of the Detroit Lions rotation at edge position, and I think he would help the team win. The Lions do got money, around $23 million in cap space, to make another move. Could they get a Jadeveon Clowney who has been injured? They could. I don't think they're going to go edge. Why is that? Because we have a plethora of edge rushers. We've talked about it endlessly on this channel, on other channels. All other content creators that you may have listened to has talked about it as well. Could they trade for a Maxx Crosby? That's the latest name now that's been floating around. I don't think so. I think they're not going to do that. And when they get into this, it talks about the bottom line, don't hold your breath. And I concur fully on that. The reason why I don't believe the Detroit Lions are going to sign a free agent, make a trade, that is not what Brad Holmes has shown since he has been here. Folks, that's just not what he has done. We have drafted our talent, and he's been an excellent general manager, finding talent in the draft. That's how this team is built, is through the draft. Young players coming in and making an impact. You look at all the young players we got. St. Brown, got Penei Sewell, Aiden Hutchinson, Lee McNeil. The list goes on. Kirby Joseph, whom the Lions got in the draft that are integral pieces towards this football team. That's how the foundation is built, is through the draft. So for making a trade for like a Maxx Crosby or some speculate, it could be 2 second-round picks. I think it'd be a first-round pick. Does not coincide with Brad Holmes has done. He hasn't done a big, giant move like that so far. Besides the Jared Goff-Stafford trade, in which Stafford requested a trade, there hasn't been giant moves like that. We've traded away players like T.J. Hockenson, but we drafted the replacement. It's not the guys that he picked. If there's an injury, I do expect the Lions would make a move because they're at that position of winning the NFC North. But I also think if you're a team that's in contention like that, Any team will make that type of move if you're in contention, because you don't want to lose that spot just because you lost one player, for sure. So the key points talk about how the Lions generated the hype, and they played really well last year, so they're trying to build the momentum, and I concur. I think when you're in a team that's in contention and you're getting that hype, you're going to get thrown more ways than not about acquiring players in free agency in the draft, as it should be. Teams trying to get over the hump. We've seen that recently with the Rams, where they traded all the talent and they won a Super Bowl, getting even Matthew Stafford. The Lions will make a substantial move. A to Z Sports predicts the Lions make a substantial move. I don't believe that's the case, because we have done it the correct and proper way. They broke it all the way down to the studs when they took over, Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes. They picked selected free agents like Khalif Raymond, right? Jamal Williams, last or 2 years ago, and he lasted for the last 2 years. But it wasn't high-priced free agents, generally one-year deals, and they drafted their players. This year, C.J. Gardner-Johnson, whom they got the one-year deal, it wasn't the Giants' contract, but I think a lot of us expect that Brian Branch could be his replacement, so he could leave in free agency, and Brian Branch just steps in because that's how you do it. You draft the replacements. So I don't see them making a big move. Could they? They could. In free agency, they could. I'm not saying they couldn't. I just have the odds. Making a trade for a Maxx Crosby or a Chase Young, who we still don't know what the trade value would be, or another player, just seems really unrealistic at this point. I know everybody likes the trades. I know they like signing free agents. It just seems unrealistic at this point. Could there be a trade for small players? Yeah, we're talking about recently. The last trade that we had was for the field goal guy, for their kicker, right? We got a kicker, but that was a nothing trade. It was just a little trade, and stuff like that's going to happen with all NFL teams. Hell, it could happen right before the 53-man roster, player whom we're not going to have in our 53. Maybe another team would allow that. So you do like a trade a player for a 7th-round pick or something, or a player swap, in which I could see that happening. But big splash move in free agency like A to Z Sports thinks here, I just don't think that's going to be the case. Possibly a trading for a surprise return of Maxx Crosby. I just think that's extremely unrealistic right now. Could the Raiders trade him? Yes. McDaniels is a weird. He's not the average Joe. We've seen Bob Quinn trade Quandre Diggs and Darius Slay. That the Patriots' way is different, and so they could trade him for sure. I just don't think the Lions would be the team to do it, because you got to also think about the contracts coming up of Jonah Jackson, St. Brown, Penei Sewell, the players whom we want to bring back to Detroit. And if you're trading for a player, a high prize player like a Maxx Crosby or a Cooper Kupp, you're not going to be able to pay everybody whom you drafted. And I think a lot of us would prefer to pay the guys whom we drafted. Pay the guys who is on this team that is already part of the culture, than making a trade, giving up draft capital, and paying a guy whom you didn't draft. I think that's the best way to go. You keep your draft picks, then you continue to draft. Lions' pursuit of talent is expected to continue for part of the key points. I do think that's the case, and Brad Holmes is going to turn every rock. That's what he does. But I think it's predominantly when the teams release their players and cut down to 53 that we may find a guy here or there to help this roster out, a back-end player, a depth player. I don't think it would be a giant splash, but you could see it. He has done that so far as general manager with Isaiah Buggs, a player you can put in there as they find where they're cut down or to pick up that fits for the Lions. That may be a player whom we can have in rotation, but as a big splash and name, I don't see it. DeAndre Hopkins was always talked about to Detroit. They ain't really any interest in him. I think that kind of shows a lot right there. That they didn't have much of interest at all, if any. None. We haven't seen any interest with these names. And I fully expect probably not to have any. It's just been more of conjecture of what people think, more or less reality. So I don't think they're making a splash move. But maybe you completely disagree. Maybe you're like, you know what, Mike? I think they will make a splash move, and you're wrong. Now, before the trade deadline, if the Lions are doing really good, I could see a move being made there. That's something I could see. It may not be a big splash move. It may be a depth player, but I could see something like that happening if the Lions are doing really good and like, you know what? We can get another player to help this team out. I don't think it'd be giant splash, but like, I couldn't tell you what type of player or what position, but I could see something like that happening. Or again, like I've been stating, if there is an injury to one of our stars, then I could see a situation like that happening because the Lions are at the cusp of winning the NFC North, and we have about $23 million in cap space. We do have assets to make sure that this season continues to roll the way we would like it to. I could see a situation like that, but right now, that's not the scenario. That's not the case. There's no injuries. I don't think they're making a big move. But let me know your thoughts. Do you think they make a splash move? I personally don't. And I agree with here of don't hold your breath. Personally, 100% agree with that. So, but let me know your thoughts. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Want to continue to grow this thing as best as we can. Hit that notification bell so you don't miss on the latest newsrooms regarding our Detroit Lions.